I got home from work a little early that Wednesday because I wanted to change into a fresh shirt before dinner. It was a business dinner meeting with several contractors who wanted to hire my firm to do the demolition. Since Joyce wasn't going with me, I didn't really care what I looked like, but I wanted a clean shirt for comfort. I sweat a lot at my job. I drove up and saw Eileen's car and couldn't help but sigh in disappointment. Eileen was Joyce's sister. She didn't love me and I didn't love her, and we both admitted it, so it was an unpleasant surprise to see her there. Luckily, I didn't plan to stay long. When I walked into the kitchen from the garage, I saw Eileen, but not Joyce. I threw my briefcase on the countertop and just stared at her. She was several years older than her sister and was a beautiful woman, I must admit, but I didn't like her personality. "What the hell are you doing here? Are you here to gloat with your sister, making a big deal about my mistake, rubbing salt in my wound? Joyce asked me to come babysit while you both went to dinner. I didn't expect you to be back until 9 or 10 p.m. Why so early? Was dinner canceled? Did you get fired, maybe?" "It's my damn company, you fool, so who's going to fire me? I just want to change into a clean shirt. So what do you mean we're both leaving? Joyce won't come with me." At that moment, Joyce entered the kitchen, all dressed up to go out. Her black dress, with a deep V-neck that reached just above the knee, was too revealing for a casual night out with her friends, and her makeup was much heavier than usual. I looked again, and if I wasn't mistaken, she wasn't wearing a bra. Her whole appearance bothered me and hinted at things I didn't like. She stopped when she saw me and her face darkened. Apparently, she didn't plan to see me tonight. She stared at me. "What are you doing here? You should be at dinner with clients." She seemed a little nervous, and the way she looked at me was a little strange. What the hell was she up to? I didn't like my thoughts. I looked her over and then asked, "What's the matter? You didn't want to go to dinner with me, but now you're going dressed like that. Who are you going to go with? You don't dress like that for your friends." "It's none of your business. I have my own plans." She was about to say more, but the doorbell rang. She flinched in surprise, and I noticed a frightened glance quickly thrown at the clock and then at me. "I'll open it. You just stay here." Of course, she headed to the front door, and I followed. I was wondering what caused such a reaction to the doorbell. What was she up to? I stopped in the hallway when she opened the door. She blocked the door and said something, gesturing with her hands, but then a man in a suit and tie walked past her into the hallway. He smiled at her and leaned in to kiss her, but she managed to turn away. He seemed surprised by her reaction, but then noticed that she was looking in my direction. Then he saw me. I walked into the hallway where they were standing and asked Joyce, "Who is this and why is he here?" "This is Ron Mason. I work with him and he came to take me to dinner. We have plans. Ron, this is Russell, my husband." "Nice to meet you." I ignored the hand he extended. I looked at the smile on his face, at Joyce's serious face, and put two and two together. It was a date, and Ron knew about our problems. He was hoping for good luck that night, and he wanted me to know it. I looked at Joyce and the nervous twitching of her hands, and knew I wasn't going to let that happen. She should have known this. Now I understood why she was so worried when I came home earlier than planned. Ignoring the hand he was still holding, I said, "I'm sorry you came here for nothing, Ron, but my wife won't come with you. She shouldn't have misled you." Joyce was furious and attacked me. "I'll go with whoever I want. You can't say anything about this." She turned and went to the closet to get the cape. I walked up to Ron Mason, stood in front of him, and said very quietly and calmly, "Get out of my house right now. My wife will not go with you today or any other day, as long as she is my wife. Leave now, or I will take you out." "You out the door." "Damn it, Russ. If you don't leave Ron alone, I'm calling the police. I mean it." I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. He turned around, handed it to her, and said, "Call 911. Order an ambulance for Mr. Bushich Mason, and then you can call the police for me." I turned to Ron and said, "Is she worth it? Decide now. You have 10 seconds, Then I'll beat you to a pulp if you're still here." It was funny how even though he was taller than me and weighed 20 pounds more, he had a look of uncertainty on his face. I raised my wrist and looked at my watch, hoping he would do something. Before I could see them change, Ron was moving towards the door. He came out in 5 seconds. I smiled to myself and then turned to Joyce. "This is not an acceptable choice, Joyce. I gave you two choices, divorce or forgiveness. There is no third option. If this is what you want, then I will file the papers tomorrow morning. Either way, you will not date. I will not allow it as long as you're married to me." I walked past her and went upstairs to the bedroom, where I changed into a clean shirt. I was breathing heavily and my heart was pounding. I knew that if I had to fight Mr. Bez Mason one-on-one, I would probably kill him. I was capable of it, as Joyce well knew. In fact, I wasn't sure how I would react to her if she challenged me. I was glad I didn't have to find out. I went to splash some water on my face, then some cologne, and I was ready for dinner. I wasn't in the mood for socializing, but it was business. I went downstairs and found Joyce and Eileen in the kitchen. Joyce was still angry and waiting for me. She started talking almost before I entered the room. "You bastard! You humiliated me in front of..." Instead of answering, I stopped and looked at her, raising my hand in a threatening gesture with rage on my face. This was enough to silence her. I stared at her with rage that could barely be contained. I wanted to hit her, to hurt her, but I cruelly suppressed this desire. I took a deep breath and lowered my hand. It had been many years since I had felt such rage, but I easily returned to the threat of violence. I winced as I regained control. I wanted to shout at her, but I just walked past, took my briefcase and keys from the wall, and went to the door. I was almost out when I stopped and turned around, still shaking. Voice now controlled, I stared at her and said, "I will repeat what I have already said. When I leave, if you decide to continue with your plans, I will accept this as your choice and your answer. Divorce or forgiveness. There is no third option. Your attempt to get back at me is unacceptable. It's the same as saying you want a divorce. Think carefully, Joyce." With these words, I left and went to the hotel where I was supposed to meet with clients. I wasn't really looking forward to this dinner, but it was a necessity. When the evening ended and we said goodbye, I paid, thanked the waiters, and headed home. It was almost 9:30, later than I wanted, but it couldn't be helped. Dinner went well, we agreed on a few proposals, and I'll finalize the details at work tomorrow. Overall, it was worth it. The work will bring me a good profit and provide work for many of my employees. I was in a good mood when I arrived at the house. I noticed Eileen's car was still there and shrugged. I walked in and saw Eileen sitting at the table with a cup of coffee. "Why are you still here? Has Joyce decided to go somewhere? Are the kids asleep?" "Yes" to both questions. "She told me to tell you that she's going to do whatever she wants and you're going to have to live with it." Eileen said this, but she looked unhappy. I heard what she said, thought about it for a minute, and then said, "Can you stay the night? Do you need to be home by a certain time?" She seemed surprised, but then said with a mischievous smile on her beautiful face, "I can stay. What are you up to?" It was a sarcastic answer, but she could stay, and that was all I needed. "I'm leaving, so you'll have to stay until she gets back. Tell her that my lawyer will contact her and let her know where I can be found. I'll begin the divorce process tomorrow morning." I went upstairs to our bedroom where I took out the suitcases I kept for business trips. I only needed enough to last a few nights so I could pick up the rest during the day while she was at work. I gathered my toiletries and enough clothes to cope and closed my suitcases. I was ready. I sat down on the bed and gave myself a minute to cry. I was heartbroken now that I realized my marriage was over. I hoped and prayed that Joyce would understand how I felt and how hurt I was by what I had done. I was honest when I said it was a terrible mistake and I regretted it, but I couldn't fix it. All I could do was prove my love in the future. I wiped my tears, stood up, and left the bedroom, perhaps for the last time. I walked down the corridor and looked into my children's room. I left them too. This moment was the most difficult, but I had no choice. I stood looking at them and felt a tear begin to fall before I quickly wiped it away. This is not the time for this. I turned and went downstairs, carrying my suitcases and trying to forget that I was leaving my children. I didn't know where I would go, but I could find a room for the night and then look for accommodation later. I took my computer from the office and carried everything into the kitchen. Eileen was on the phone. I assumed she was trying to call Joyce, but she seemed to be having trouble. Well, that's a pity. Tell Joyce that someone will contact her at work tomorrow to find out the name of her lawyer, and tell her to get a good one because she will need it. I will fight for custody of the children. I have no intentions of being nice and fair now. She made her choice, and according to God, she will have to live with him. Good night, and sorry that you found yourself in the middle of all this. But you know, this is what you always wanted, isn't it? Enjoy. I'm really sorry, Russ. No, this isn't what I wanted, but you probably won't believe me. I tried to warn her, but she didn't listen. Please don't do anything crazy. Please. With this surprise, I walked out of my home and out of my marriage. It started almost 14 years ago. I was young, brash, and confident, and had just returned home from the army, where I had spent 8 good years learning to kill with my bare hands. To make this even better, I learned how to plant explosives to kill more enemies at once. I later modified it so that any idiot could detonate it, especially officers hiding out of sight and out of danger. I was damn good at both, and my captain begged me to re-enlist, but I wanted to get out and start earning a living and get all the good things money can buy. I returned home to Youngstown, Ohio, the city of my birth. Immediately after training, I went to work as a blaster for a mining company in southern Ohio, where coal was still mined the old-fashioned way, open-pit mining. It was a well-paid job, mainly because the so-called experts didn't stay long. Most of them blew themselves and everyone around them to pieces. But like I said, I was full of myself, very good at it, and immortal. Nothing could happen to me. I did my job, and within a few months, I was making almost $2,000 a week planting explosives for a company in 3 different mines. I moved around, going where I was needed, and was always in demand. The bosses knew I was safe and could blast rock with less explosives than most. Although I made good money, I was too smart to continue this kind of work, so I saved almost everything I earned. Once I had over $20,000 saved up, I decided to look for greener pastures. I went to work for a demolition construction company and made just as much money as before, only now it was under a blue sky instead of in a muddy, rocky trench. I found the work fascinating, and I learned from guys who had been doing this for a while. There was a certain scheme for laying explosives, and for some reason these schemes seemed to jump into my eyes when I saw the drawings of any building. I quickly became one of the leading experts in planting charges. My dream was to have my own company that would specialize in demolition of all types. You'd be surprised how many there are. I knew them all and knew how to do it. I worked for another 2 years before I finally took the plunge. I got my license and talked to an attorney who told me how to register, and there I was in business. Cranston Demolitions, Inc. It was me. I was Russell Cranston. I was 30 years old, and I finally had my own damn company. Within another 3 years, I was solvent and making money faster than I knew what to do with it. I hired a few good people, all with military experience in demolitions and demolition, and began to expand. We took jobs all over the state and then all over the country. I started using my guys more and more for travel and project management. I was a former master sergeant. I knew how to delegate work, so I had some free time and started visiting local drinking establishments. Not to get drunk. I never liked the feeling and couldn't hold my alcohol down, so I usually just drank beer and looked at the girls. That's how I met Joyce Kenyon. Joyce was one of 5 girls who walked into Clancy's Bar and Grill, where I was hosting one evening. I couldn't tell what the other girls looked like because I only had eyes for Joyce. She was beautiful. Tall, slender figure, long, straight blonde hair, blue eyes that took your breath away, and a face like an angel. Her demeanor spoke of money. One look and I was hooked. I finished my beer and asked her to dance. For some reason she liked me, and we danced together almost the entire evening. We were interrupted a couple of times by other guys, but she always came back to me. I got her name and phone number before she left and called her 2 days later. We agreed to meet, and I picked her up from the house. This was the first surprise. Her family was wealthy and lived in a very prestigious part of the city. I wasn't from that area at all. Remember, I didn't even go to college and spent most of my time in the army blowing up crap. So I immediately had doubts that we would succeed. But Joyce and I continued to get along great. After a whirlwind courtship lasting almost a year, I asked her to marry me, and she accepted. We went to her parents, who took the news better than I expected. I knew I had gained her father's respect when he found out that I had my own company and it was well known in the city, but not her sister Eileen. She hated me for some reason, but I didn't care. Joyce said yes, and that's all I cared about. I had enough money in the bank, so we bought a nice house in a nice area and settled down to start a family. Joyce had no problems getting pregnant, and we almost immediately had the baby as soon as possible. She said she wanted to have 2 children and raise them while we were still young. 12 months later, Julie was born, and we now had 1 child of each gender. We were both happy with our new family. For the next 7 years, we had an ideal life. I loved my children and my wife, and she seemed as happy as I was. My company continued to grow, and we started taking on jobs overseas. I hired a few other ex-military personnel, and they did most of the traveling and organizing. I checked and signed all the plans and only went to those jobs that were particularly sensitive or extremely complex. The business grew, and I made more money. When both children started going to school during the day, Joyce decided to take a job at a real estate agency as a secretary and receptionist. She just wanted to do something to get out of the house and interact with people, not just other mothers who only talked about children. She liked the job and the hours were convenient, allowing her to be home when the children returned from school. 5 years passed, and in the summer of 26, I took a job in Brazil. It was the demolition of a mountain to free up land for a few very wealthy Europeans who wanted the anonymity that Brazil was famous for. We had already done this in California, so it was actually a piece of cake, but I was asked to personally handle it. For the amount of money they offered me, I would give them my firstborn. It seemed like I had enough, so I went to Brazil. Joyce decided to stay home, so I took one of my people instead. My only condition was that I would not stay more than a week, so I stayed there for a week and flew home on a chartered plane provided by my hosts on Friday. I spent the weekend with my family and returned on Monday morning. Joyce understood, so I continued this for the next 2 weeks. In the third week, when the work was completed, my clients had a going-away party. I wanted to say goodbye to several people I had become friends with during my time there. We had a good time, I liked their local wine, and by the end of the evening, I was as drunk as I've ever been in my life. So drunk that I ended up spending the night with a young woman who had shown an interest in me from the very beginning. I wasn't too drunk to remember what we did. I apologized to her the next morning, but she just said she didn't regret anything. I was sorry, and the thought of what I had done haunted me all morning until I vomited in the bathroom. When I returned home, I tried to forget about all this, but the feeling of guilt would not let me rest. I started losing sleep, lost my appetite, and eventually started making mistakes at work. I decided that I should tell Joyce what happened and ask her forgiveness. If I had talked to someone who had been through this, I might have done things differently, but I didn't. That Friday, I came home and told her when the children were already asleep. This didn't go well. Joyce, I need to tell you something. It's been hard for me to keep this a secret, so I have to be honest. What's wrong, Russ? Problems with the company? Did someone make a mistake or something? Well, it was a mistake, but it was my mistake. The last night I was in Brazil, I went to a party and got very drunk. I only drank wine, but their wine is much stronger than I thought. I spent the night with a girl at a party. I didn't realize what I was doing until I woke up the next morning. I barely knew her, but she followed me the whole time I was there and took her chance. Honestly, I feel bad about it, and that's it. It didn't mean anything and I was too drunk to remember the details. I'm sorry, but I had to tell you. Joyce looked at me as if I had hit her. She stood up, crossed her arms, and looked at me with tears streaming down her face. I panicked. I tried to hug her to console her, but she pushed my hands away. She stepped back, her eyes burning through her tears, before she spoke. You son of a bitch. You traitor. How could you do this to us? How could you do this to me? She was furious, her anger erasing shock and tears. What about the children? Did you think about them? Or about me? Did you even remember that you have a wife and children? No, no, you didn't think about us. But I told you, I was drunk. You know that I can't drink, and that's why I almost never do it. It was just wine, but I didn't know it was so strong. I got drunk and didn't realize that I did. You have to understand this. I didn't want this. You know that I love you and the children more than anything. No, you do not love. You couldn't love and still do what you did. She cried and rushed around the kitchen. She was much more angry than I expected. I knew she would be angry, but not to this extent. This was beyond what I thought possible. I remembered this much later. I'm going to bed. You sleep in the guest room. I don't want you near me. Good night. She ran up the stairs to the bedroom. I heard the door slam and then silence. The weekend went very badly. Joyce didn't talk to me, and she and the kids left early Saturday morning to God knows where. I wasn't invited. I wandered around the house and did my manly things, waiting for them to return. I had just put things away when they returned. Where have you been all day? You didn't even leave me a note telling me where you would be. What if I were to find you? I was a little angry. What do you care about? She smirked before turning and walking away. So this is how it will be. I guess I'll have to spend my time in purgatory until she either forgives me or something else. I probably deserved it, so I decided to try to stay busy and not give her a reason to yell at me. Joyce continued her punishment for another 2 weeks before she finally broke down and spoke to me. It was again after dinner, when the children had gone to bed. I was sitting in the living room reading some sentences that Jerry, my main assistant, had written. They concerned demolition work on 15-story buildings in the center of New York. It was a good offer and an estimate that I completely agreed with, so I had just put my initials on it when she came in and sat down across from the desk where I was working. We need to talk. She still looked angry, but at least she wanted to talk to me, so I responded in kind. Okay? I agree, we need to talk. I think I've said everything I need to say. The next step is up to you. I've made a few decisions. I'm still mad at you, and I need to find a way to forgive you. I don't know what that way is, but whatever it is, you might not like it. I just want to warn you in advance. She had a smile on her face, but her gaze was unkind. It made me angry, but I wanted to know what she was up to. I don't quite understand what you mean. I don't care what you want to do to deal with your anger, but there are things I won't accept, no matter what you want. You certainly know what I'm talking about. I wanted to find out right away. There was no opportunity for revenge or punishment on me if it meant cheating. I did it, and it was wrong, but I didn't do it intentionally or consciously. I told her this. I would never accept her deliberate betrayal. You're not in a position to tell me what I can or can't do. And anyway, if you were allowed to do it, why shouldn't I? Tell me that. What I did without knowing what I was doing. And it was wrong then, and it's wrong now for you. I would never have done it knowingly. I was drunk, and I made a mistake. That's why. I don't accept it. If you want me to forgive you, you may have to accept that I can do the same thing as you. It would be fair. You have to accept it. She still had that grin on her face, and it scared me. She was seriously considering cheating on me. I had to make her understand that I couldn't accept it, that it would be just as wrong. I understand that you are angry and hurt. I know that you want to hurt me so that I feel the same as you. But two wrongs do not make a right, and if you do what I think you are planning, it won't be right. Let me put it this way. If what I did makes you so angry, then it's important to you. So if you do it, what will it tell me? If you deliberately cheat on me with another man, our marriage will be over. I will not accept your betrayal." Joyce stared at me, and her lips pressed together in a straight line. She was furious and ready to explode. She struggled with this for a few minutes before standing up and staring at me. "You're a hypocrite. Do you want me to forgive you and not do anything to make you understand how I feel? If I understand correctly, you are saying that you will deliberately cheat on me, thinking that it will hurt me as much as it will hurt you. Now, listen carefully. If you do this, our marriage will end. You either have to find a way to forgive me and forget what I did, and let me prove to you that I am a good husband and father, or we get divorced and go our separate ways. I would hate it because I love you and this family with all my heart. But I will not tolerate yours. Betrayal to punish me. I will never accept this." Joyce's lips closed and her face turned white with anger. She struggled with herself before finally speaking again. "You can't tell me what to do. You screwed up, and now you're going to have to pay. So you better be ready to accept whatever I do. You have no choice." I stood up to meet her gaze and looked straight into her eyes. I wanted her to know that this was not disgust. "I have a choice. It's called divorce. Your choice is whether or not I do it. And don't kid yourself. I will never accept your cheating for any reason." I stared at her. There was anger bubbling inside me, but also a deep worry that things weren't going to get better anytime soon. As she turned and walked away, I thought again about her anger and the depth of it. Suddenly, I wondered if Joyce was hiding something that he felt guilty about, and was using this situation to cover it up or turn the situation to his advantage. The thought turned my stomach. Several weeks passed like this. I was hoping things would calm down, so I asked her to come with me to a dinner I was hosting with two clients who wanted me to tear down some buildings. I told her it was a good business deal and that it would make us a lot of money. I thought it might interest her, but she quickly rejected the idea. "I don't want to go to dinner with you and your construction pigs. All you'll talk about is explosions, and I'll be bored to death. Go have some fun. Maybe you'll get lucky and find some lady to go home with." Those construction pigs, as you call them, paid for everything we have. It seemed normal when you wanted that new kitchen, or that trip to Cancun, or that new dress you bought last week. I don't. I knew you thought so little about my business. I never liked what you do. Explosions. I'm embarrassed to tell people what you do. This silenced me. I never knew she felt this way. We always worked hard to achieve success and dreamed of retiring when the kids left home. We planned to move to the coast, where we would buy a boat and sail along the coast, stopping when we found an interesting place. It was our dream, but now, with my face like a mask and blood rushing to my neck and face, I answered very quietly, "I'm sorry you think so little of my company. I'll go without you then. You don't need to worry about that." I left her and went outside to cool off. I knew she was angry, but why did she have to say what she said? To hurt me? Well, she succeeded. Fully. She was obviously ashamed of me, and now she was angry enough to tell me this for the first time. Eagerly, I got in the car and simply drove around the city for the next 3 hours, ending at one of the parks I had helped clean up. I went out and walked around looking at the new trees, benches, tables, walkways, and the covered area that was used when the unexpected rain started to fall. What I saw gave me a feeling of pride, not shame. I got home late that night, parked in the garage, and closed the door. I sat in the car trying to decide what to do next. This went on for too long. I had to do something or our marriage would end. I just didn't know what exactly. Eventually, I went inside to face Joyce and her venomous reproaches. "Where the hell have you been? It's past 8 and the kids have been asking where you are." "I was outside. Not that you cared. I was too angry to stay and argue." "Ah, fuck you. I'm tired of this already." Furious, I left her to find the children. I sat with them until they went to bed, and then put them to bed myself. Maybe I'll have to get used to it. This could become my way of life. It was well after midnight when I went upstairs to bed. Joyce left earlier, but that didn't change anything. Although I returned to the bedroom, we have not made love since I told her what happened. I had no expectations and hoped that if I waited long enough, she would fall asleep. That didn't happen tonight. She stopped me as I walked by on my way to the guest room. Russ, I'm sorry for what I said earlier. I'm not ashamed of what you do. I just said it to anger and hurt you. I'm sorry. Actually, I believe you were telling the truth, Joyce. I see the way you act around my employees. I see the way you turn away when someone I know sees me in public. I hear you and your sister are talking, and I'm listening to you tell your mother how rude some of my friends are. I just never paid attention to it before. I didn't know that you were so ashamed of me in front of your friends. Now I know. That's not true. Sorry, Russ. I didn't mean it like that. Okay, Joyce, let's just forget about it. I'm really tired tonight, and I don't want to fight with you anymore. I'll stay in the guest room. With that, I walked past her and headed to the guest room we kept for her parents when they came to visit. We were cold towards each other for the rest of the week until that night of dinner. I had already stopped trying to appease her and just accepted that she would no longer help me with the business, especially now that I knew how she felt about him. But you know what happened that night, which brings us back to the present. To my departure, leaving Eileen desperately trying to contact Joyce, I drove off and found a small, secluded hotel with a sign saying, "Rooms available." I checked in, taking a room on the first floor with a large bed and a small kitchen. It cost $80 a night or $500 a week, cash only. It took a week. I unpacked my clothes, hung them up, and put the rest in drawers. Not bad. At least it was clean and dry and the sheets looked decent. I checked the bathroom and found it clean. I didn't need anything else. I sat on the bed, trying to decide what to do next. I was curious what Joyce would do when he got home. In fact, I was more than a little curious. Since I was still nervous, I decided to go to the house and wait a little away to see for myself. I left and drove to the house, parking at the bottom of the street. I saw that Eileen's car was still there, and I could see the driveway and the front door, and the light from the street light allowed me to see who was in the car when she got home. Her car was in the garage when I left, so she must have been with someone. I made myself comfortable and began to wait. Only 10 minutes had passed when I saw a car approaching. I ducked down to make the car appear empty and let them drive by before getting back up. I watched the car pull into our driveway and stop. The headlights went off, and I saw Joyce in the passenger seat and a man in the other. I couldn't clearly see if it was Ron Mason, but the car looked familiar. For the next few minutes, nothing happened, but I saw the curtains in the house being pulled back several times. Eileen must have been waiting to talk to Joyce. Then I saw Joyce lean over and kiss the man. He hugged her, and they kissed. I watched them, and my anger grew to the point that I began to contemplate confrontation when the front door opened and Eileen ran down the path. She ran to the car and knocked on the window. She turned to see Eileen and rolled down the window. Eileen screamed at her, waving her arms, clearly agitated. No matter what she said, Joyce finally began to worry, and she jumped out of the car and ran towards the house, Eileen following, forgetting about the man in the car. He got out of the car, but just stood there, watching the two women. He appeared to laugh, but then got back into the car and drove off. It took no more than a minute before my cell phone started ringing. I looked at the call ID and saw that it was Joyce calling from our home phone. I let the call go to voicemail. A minute later it rang again, and I saw that it was Eileen's phone. How did they think I didn't know her number? I decided the best thing to do was just turn off the damn phone. I sat there, my thoughts going back to what I had seen, and I felt the first signs of doubt about my love for Joyce. A little more, and she will die. I left and headed back to the motel. I remembered seeing a bar across the street, and it seemed like a good plan. I returned to my room, staggering, well after 2 in the morning, feeling no pain. Joyce was just a mild irritant, nothing more. I slept the sleep of the righteous that night. The next morning, I called the office and spoke with Jerry McCain, my deputy. I told him where I was and asked him to come to my room. I asked him to bring the contracts that I had started drawing up the day before regarding the clients I had met with last night. He was curious, but smart enough to just do as I asked. I called my lawyer and asked for an appointment for today if possible. He set it for 1:30. Perfect for me. When Jerry arrived, I told him about my personal problem and about the meeting the night before. He could handle the second issue, and the first one didn't concern him, but I told him so he would know why I would be gone for the next few weeks. He agreed to manage everything for me, just as he had done before when I was traveling or on vacation. He was smart enough to forget what I told him about Joyce. As he was leaving, he stopped and said, "Boss, how about we blow up that bastard's house? Just a little gas explosion. It happens all the time. No one but you and me will know anything." "Thanks, Jer, but not now. Maybe it will come to that, then it will just be you and me. Like before, those were the good times." Then I had a thought. Why don't you get someone to check the records to see what objects this bastard owns? It might come in handy. He smiled and left. He was serious, and so was I. My meeting with Sol Steinberg didn't go so easily. He was unhappy with plans to file for divorce. He had information about my business, income, and Joyce's income, and he did not like the amounts that could be taken into account in the event of a divorce. Any divorce must be filed as no fault. The state is not interested in my reasons, and they are not interested in adultery. This is not suitable as a reason for divorce. I might be able to cause her some inconvenience if I sued her lover for alienation of affection, but that would be risky. What if the lover has no money? Big loss. Saul wanted to see if he could work things out and save me a lot of money. In the end, I told him to prepare something and we could discuss the terms later. I asked him to create 2 trust funds for children and the best ways to fund them. I could file for guardianship, of course. In this case, infidelity would play some role, but only if I could prove that she has terrible morals and exposed children to danger. Not very likely. I told Saul to call her and find out her name, her lawyer, just so she knows I keep my word. He agreed and said he would call later in the day. I drove back to my motel. I went back to the bar across the street and ordered a burger and beer. I decided to stay sober now that my anger had subsided. From now on, I will be cool. I took the booth, turned on my phone, and checked my call log. 17 calls from Joyce. I went through the list, deleting them all, and my phone rang again. This time I answered. "Hello? Russell, where the hell are you?" A scream in my ear. I looked at the phone and closed the lid. I won't listen to this nonsense. I saw her last night. I know what she did, and she knew how I felt about it. I told her clearly before I left that night. Without a doubt, the phone rang twice more before I answered. "Yes?" No screaming this time. "Russell, please tell me where you are. You didn't come home last night, and I was worried. Where are you, honey? Please tell me." "Where were you last night, Joyce? I told you what would happen if you did this, and you did it anyway. So I left, just like I promised. I told you, Joyce, there were 2 choices. There was no third. But you didn't listen." "Russell, honey, no. I just went with my friends, the girls from work. I was angry, and I just wanted someone to talk to. That's all. Honestly, honey, now, please, just come home." "Sorry, Joyce. A lie isn't the best way to start this. I was sitting down the street when you came home. It wasn't just any friend, and the kiss you gave him wasn't the kind you give to friends. Looks like it's not the first time. You've never been good at lying, Joyce. Saul will call you today. Tell him who you want as your divorce lawyer." With that, I pressed the end call button and held it long enough to turn off the phone. I'm done talking to her lying face. My burger arrived, and I enjoyed it, and my beer. I had another beer before heading back to my room. I called Jerry and got a rundown of what was going on. He told me about a job in Rio that someone wanted us to consider, so I wrote down the name and number and made the call. The next day, I just checked in with Jerry and Saul and found out that Joyce was in a panic and was calling both of them almost every hour. Now she was convinced that I was serious and did not know how to contact me. I didn't give my motel number to anyone, and only Jerry knew where I was. I knew he would never tell Joyce. He didn't really like her. Never told me why, just avoided her as best he could. It seems he was a seer. It's been 4 days since I left the house. We spent one of these days with Saul and Jerry, and the next 3 days we just drove around the city, checking on work and past projects. I enjoyed my free time, and the thought of retirement became more and more prominent in my thoughts. Saul and I calculated the value of the business, and it was more than 7 figures, enough to allow me to retire in good health, even if I had to share it with Joyce. Both Justin and Julie, our children, were provided for by a trust fund that Saul created and funded. They'll be fine, regardless of the fight between Joyce and me. On the 5th day, I decided to call Joyce and try to arrange a time to talk. We had some issues to resolve, and we needed to agree on child custody. This bothered me. I called them twice and told them that I was fine and that I was just very busy. Although I told Eileen I would file for full custody, I wasn't serious. Joyce was a wonderful mother, and the children needed her more than they needed me. And Joyce would never put them in danger, so I called. Russell, please don't hang up again. Please, I need to see you. You didn't come back last night, and I was worried. Where are you, honey? Please tell me. Actually, Joyce, I think we really need to talk. I was wondering when it would be convenient for me to come over. Whenever would be convenient for you. Anytime. Now? Tonight? Anytime. I'm not working for a while. I'm here at home, just waiting for your call. Did you have Ron? Are you still together? Ron was never in the house, except for the night you made him leave. And we're not together. It was my mistake, and I'm so sorry. Okay, I just don't want to run into your lovers when I come over. How about tonight? Can you ask your parents to pick up the kids today? Sure. Around 6, I can make dinner. What about 7, and don't cook dinner? Okay, that'll do. 7 o'clock then. I hung up the phone, sat on the bed, and let the tears fall. No matter what she did, I loved her, and it wasn't easy to turn it off. It couldn't end that easily. When I arrived exactly at 7, she was waiting. The door opened before I could touch it. She stood there looking a little scared and nervous. She stepped aside, and I entered. I went to the kitchen and sat down at the table. Joyce followed me, went to the counter, and made us coffee, plain for me with a little sugar, and white for her. She put the cup in front of me and sat down opposite me. I noticed that she doesn't handle it very well. She looked tired, her hair was combed, but without the shine it usually had. Her face was puffy and swollen, probably from crying. Unfortunately, I felt almost nothing while looking at her. I decided to start the conversation and then let it go where it goes. I contacted Saul about the divorce. He has prepared some preliminary figures that we should discuss. I would like to send them to your lawyer first. No, Russell, I don't want a divorce. I love you, and I admit that I made a big mistake. I'm sorry, Russ, but don't let this mistake ruin our lives and our marriage. I saw your mistake. It was not a mistake. It was not a mistake. You promised to take revenge on me and used him for it. I told you what would happen. Now I don't want to hear any more of your lies. No, Russell, please, dear, I'm sorry. I forgive you. We have to move on for the sake of the children. They don't deserve to pay for my stupidity. You were right. I should have forgiven you and moved on. I'm doing it. I forgive you. Please cancel the divorce and come home. I looked at her and saw that she was scared, but I didn't believe her about her time with Ron Mason. Joyce was not the forgive and forget type. If she promised to take revenge, she did it. I saw some of it, but I didn't know the whole truth. I had suspicions, but not facts. And I started all this with my stupid act. So what should I do? I needed time to find out the truth. Okay, Joyce, let me think about it. I'm not sure I believe you, but I did start this. I'll tell Saul to hold off on the divorce while you and I try to work this out. Thank you, Russ. You won't regret it. We can work this out and get back to the way things were. Come home right now. Please? Not tonight. I need time to think and make decisions. I gave you 2 choices, and you tried to make a third. Now I need to make a decision. I know I screwed up, but I apologized and didn't plan for it. You didn't believe me, and I didn't listen until I got my revenge. Now you want to forgive me and have me come home. It makes me wonder what you really did. No, I didn't do anything other than that kiss, and I said I was sorry for that. I just realized what it means to be without you. This week has taught me a lesson. I don't want to be without you. Please come home and let's start again. I'll call you, but I don't want to be here tonight. I need to leave. I left immediately before she could begin another wave of pleading. I needed to think. I had to decide if I believed her. I needed time alone. I headed back to my bar and a few cold beers. 2 days passed before I decided to go home and give it a chance. Maybe Joyce had cheated on me, but I didn't know for sure, and it wasn't enough to make me give up. If I screwed up, and she did too, well, maybe we're even. She challenged me and reached my limit, but so what? I loved her and didn't want our marriage to end, so in the end, I decided in favor of my family. Maybe I was wrong, but sue me. Joyce was true to her word. She didn't mention the cheating and did everything she could to show me that she had forgiven me. I returned home, and the first night, it was almost like our honeymoon. I returned to work, and Joyce surprised me by quitting her job at the real estate agency. She said she didn't want to see Ron Mason anymore, and if she stayed there, she would see him every day. She said the memories of what almost happened were too much for her. I agreed, but wondered if this was the real reason. The thought that was running through my head was that Joyce had given up too easily. I knew her well, and I knew that when she decided to do something, she did it. Nothing could stop her. She threatened to cheat on me to get revenge, and she never made empty threats. I began to believe even more strongly that she had already done it. With that in mind, there have been a few things I've been working on since returning home. First, the value of the company. Saul and I launched test balloons and got solid estimates of what others were willing to pay. The amount was well over $4 million for the business, the guarantee of all open contracts, and the good name we had established in the industry. We didn't have a lot of concrete and steel, but we had the knowledge and experience. These things cannot be bought with money, but they raised the price. I then met with Jerry and several other key people and discussed a possible sale. We worked out a stock buyback plan with Jerry and 7 others that I proposed to the company. We even went so far as to receive letters of intent from several financial institutions. The price was below our best estimate, but I would have preferred to sell to Jerry, and after all, he was an integral part of the company, just like me. He was worth the difference, and loyalty was part of it too. Finally, I spoke with Buddy Zaragoza, a leading security expert with whom we sometimes worked. There were often situations where security was needed to make sure that the buildings we were going to demolish were empty and remained that way. Homeless people liked to return to empty buildings and weren't very good at reading signs. Security was so well equipped for sound that they could hear someone breathing in some areas. I made some arrangements with him. It's been almost a month since I returned home, and I have to admit that everything has been going very well. Joyce continued to be a loving wife and wonderful mother, and while at home, helped in both the kitchen and bedroom. Meals became more fun with the kids, and we talked and had fun. I felt more confident, but I had doubts, and I wanted to be sure. I arranged for my security contact to come to the house one night when I would take Joyce and the kids out to dinner. We went to a pizzeria, ate pizza, and drank cold drinks. The kids were delighted, and Joyce was glad for an evening where she didn't have to cook. We were gone for almost 2 hours, which was more than enough time for Buddy. When I got home, I spent an hour or more trying to find what Buddy had done, but I didn't see anything. He was good, that's for sure. Almost 2 weeks passed before Buddy called me at the office. He wanted me to come to him. He had something I needed to hear. I said I'll be there in an hour. I sat at the table, my heart pounding with fear. What did he have? Is this what I was afraid of? Did she do it again? More of these thoughts were running through my head, and by the time I left, my stomach was hurting. But I had to go, and I had to find out the truth. When I got there, Buddy took me to a small meeting room equipped with several monitors and 2 large speakers. He sat me down at the table and walked over to a small control panel, did something there, and then sat down next to me. What you're about to hear is a conversation between your wife and her sister. Eileen, if I'm not mistaken. This was last night. Nothing interesting happened before. I was hoping it would continue like this, but listen for yourself. We listened to your phones, as you agreed, and we have both sides of the conversation. I can fast forward so you can hear the important parts. With these words, he pointed the remote control at the console and pressed a button. And after dinner, when we got into the car, he invited me to go for a ride with him. What did you say? You didn't go with him, did you? Yeah, I went. I was so mad at Russell that I just wanted to stay away. The dinner was fun and Ron is a great listener, but it was over so quickly. I just wanted to stay away. Well, nothing happened, right? You didn't do anything to him? We went to the park at 5th and Concord. You know, the one where we take Justin and Julie. We parked behind empty cars. We just talked for a little while, and then we kissed. Damn it, sister. Tell me you stopped there. Just a kiss, nothing more. I hope you didn't risk your marriage for that creep. No, we didn't stop there. Damn. Well, what happened next? She continued her story. I stood up and Buddy stopped the recording. I started to feel sick. Buddy didn't say anything, but he took my hand and led me to the closed door. He opened it and showed me the bathroom. I went in, vomited everything that was in my stomach, and stayed there until the cramping stopped. I rinsed my face with cold water and leaned over the sink, trying to calm myself. I didn't want to listen anymore, but I knew I had to. I walked out to finish listening to my wife's betrayal. Well, Ras, need to listen more? It's the same thing there. I'll just take the tape and listen to it when I'm alone. I don't need to humiliate myself in front of you anymore. Well, no, but there's one more part you need to hear. There's no sex. Okay? Sure, okay. Whatever, just turn it on. Buddy put on his headphones, listened for a few seconds, then stopped. There she is. You need to hear this. It all started with Eileen talking to Joyce. But why did you do it? Why the hell did you do it after Russell threatened you? Did you want to end your marriage? No, but you see, that's the whole point. He cheated on me, and it made me so angry that I couldn't stand it. I know what he said. It was an accident. He was drunk and didn't know what he was doing. But so what? He did it, and I had to take revenge. Then he humiliated me in front of Ron that night, so I became even angrier at him and knew that I had to do something to get back at him. The only difference was that he wasn't supposed to find out. But see, I knew. I knew I cheated on him with Ron Mason behind his back, and he would never have found out. It was my secret. In fact, that's why I can accept Russell now, because it's his first time in his car. But what if he finds out? What then? What will he do? Divorce me? He loves me as much as I love him. He would never do that. We love each other too much to divorce. Anyway, he won't do it because of Justin and Julie. I don't know, sister. I heard him that night when he came home and you left. He didn't look like he was afraid of losing you. He was furious and wanted you to leave. Trust me. Don't ever let him find out. He won't find out. That's why I quit my job, so I wouldn't have to see Ron every day. I couldn't stand it. It's good that it's over. I'm really worried about you if he finds out. You'll lose too much. Just forget it. Please, it's better. Who said it's over? I'll probably do it again. Buddy stopped the recording and leaned back. He watched me, waiting for my reaction. Well, that sums it up, doesn't it? It's worse than I suspected. I stood up, testing my shaking legs, and knew they could hold up. I asked Buddy to give me the recording, and he handed me the CD. I put it in my briefcase. I wanted to make a copy of the house before I gave it to Saul. I drove back to the office, spent some time working on a few ideas, and then drove home. I needed to think and plan. As I listened to my loving wife's words destroying our marriage, I knew what I wanted to do. Now everything was simple. These words were the beginning of my realization that our marriage was over, and that I no longer loved her. Not for real. I was still attached to her, but now that I knew the depth of her deceit and betrayal, and how she felt about our marriage, I felt the love fade. I pulled into the garage and entered the house to be with my family. I was going to enjoy these next few weeks, knowing it wouldn't happen again. There will be no change in my behavior until I am ready. While I'm gone, I'll play with my kids and spend as much time with them as possible and plan to have sex with Joyce, but won't do it lovingly anymore. Joyce and I continued to live as if nothing had changed. If she noticed a difference in the bedroom, she didn't comment on it, perhaps because she was trying not to start talking about the night she left. I didn't mention it either because I didn't want to discuss it. Thus, we spent 3 months as husband and wife, mother and father, but not as lovers. At least from my side, I simply treated her now as a traitor. I continued to monitor calls in the house using the equipment Buddy left me. The only difference was that the recorder was now hidden in the garage in the corner of my tool rack. Joyce never went near the tools and Justin was not allowed to use them, so it was safe there, and I would check it in the evenings, pretending I was working on some project. After 3 months, Joyce hadn't mentioned Ron Mason once, and I began to wonder what she was waiting for. While looking through phone records, I came across one noteworthy call. Joyce called Eileen to see if she could look after the baby the following week. It turns out Joyce was planning to meet Ron for dinner. When Eileen asked her directly about this, Joyce acted flirtatiously, giggled, and hinted, but did not directly confirm that she intended to resume an intimate relationship with Ron. I was surprised that Eileen was persistent in discouraging Joyce from seeing Ron, given her dislike of me, and Joyce was very careful in her statements. She did not mention her colleagues or Ron by name. The reason why she said his name for the first time intrigued me. I decided to use this information to put some pressure on Joyce. My opportunity came during dinner the next evening. It was Friday, and I came home early, which was rare for me. I worked very hard on some proposals and spent several evenings working at home. But now these assessments were almost completed, and I could afford to rest a little. Dinner was finished and Joyce and Julie washed the dishes while Jason and I dried. It was a routine that we tried to maintain with the children, making them part of the process. They didn't get tired of it, and we often talked about our plans and days. This is what happened that night. Russ, do you have any plans for next Wednesday? I wanted to go to dinner with the Stryker girls. I called Eileen, and she can babysit until you get home. I won't be long, and we'll leave around 4:30. You do not mind. I didn't know you kept in touch with your former colleagues. What happened when you suddenly wanted to go to dinner with them? Some special occasion? Joyce seemed nervous and clearly didn't like answering questions, so instead of answering, she decided to attack. Why should this be a problem for you? I haven't gone anywhere for the last 3 months since I quit my job. I just want to see some of my friends. Do you have a problem with that? No, I have no problem. Will Ron be there? Her reaction was too quick and too angry to be convincing. Of course not. I told you it's with the girls. Her face was angry, and she looked down at the sink and the water, everywhere but at me. Enough. She just kept lying, and thanks to the recording, I was sure of that. Joyce was a terrible liar, and she became nervous and anxious when she lied. It was a classic case, and I got what I wanted to know. Even though I put pressure on her and made her nervous, she didn't want to stop. I decided to give up. It just wasn't worth it. Okay, that suits me. I'll be home at the usual time and relieve Eileen. Go and have fun. I finished drying the dishes and went to watch the news. I knew she was planning to meet Ron for dinner and then spend the evening with him. If he was smart, he already had a room booked and would have taken her there. I expected her to meet him at either the Ramada or the Holiday Inn. Both hotels had pretty decent restaurants and bars, and rooms for rent. I wanted to check the recorder tonight since she'll probably call him soon, probably right after I go to the garage. Joyce came in after the kids had gone to play video games in the playroom and sat next to me. She leaned her head on my shoulder and began stroking my hand. I let her do it to see what she would do. Sorry, Russ. I know you still don't trust me very much, but honestly, honey, it's just a dinner with the girls. Ron won't be there because he wasn't invited. You can check if you want. The reservation is in my name. There's no need. I don't want to check on you every time you go out. If I have to do that, we won't have a real marriage. I know I screwed up, and I know you were angry, so it's my fault. That you did what you did. I'm just glad it didn't go beyond that kiss. I can forgive it, especially now that you've forgiven me, right? Of course I did. I told you that, and I hope I showed it. We've been having a lot of fun in the bedroom lately. I see that you have forgiven me. I have forgiven, and I know you would never betray me like that. You love your family too much to do that. I made a mistake, but it shouldn't cost us our marriage and our life together. I just wish that I had such strength and integrity that you showed in controlling your actions with Ron. I trust you completely. The momentary tension in her body would have been a clear sign, but when her hand stopped for a moment, it was enough to convince me that she was definitely going to cheat on me again. All I could do was wait for her to do it in reality. Thank you for your trust. I won't let you down. It was so obvious that she was lying to me, and I wasn't sure how she could love so much after the words I said. She's supposed to be a cold, calculating bitch. Why have I never noticed this before? I let it go and just let her feel like she cleared my doubts. It's a shame Joyce wasn't smarter. Perhaps we could save our lives together and save our marriage. But she was too selfish and too stupid to understand that what I did and what she did were two different things. I was sorry and promised not to do it again, but she was happy about what she had done and planned to do it again. Her anger blinded her actions. She justified her actions by blaming me. As I expected, Joyce called right after I went into the garage and closed the door. I saw the lights come on and the recorder turn on, and I waited. It only took 5 minutes before it went out. The call ended. Joyce was probably putting the kids to bed at this time, so I took the recorder off, rewound it to the beginning of the call, and listened. Hello? Hi, Ron. This is Joyce. Hi, honey. I've been waiting for your call. Are you ready to meet again? I can't wait to see you again. Well, that's why I'm calling. I'll be free from 4:30 on Wednesday. I made a reservation at the Ramada for dinner and was hoping you could meet me there. Why have dinner? I'll take a room and we'll spend the whole evening in bed. I have a few ideas on how we can spend our time. Sounds like fun to me. Last time was fantastic, so I hope you stop that on Wednesday. Don't worry, I'll take care of you. Trust me. I'm counting on it. I'll meet you in the lobby around 4:25. We'll have about 2 hours or a little more. See you then. That was the whole conversation. Nothing more, just confirmation of the date and memory of the night she committed her first infidelity. She lied to me about dinner and about Ron, and she did it knowingly, knowing what she planned to do. This wasn't revenge. It was Joyce, planning to make me a cuckold, staying at home with the kids while she was with her lover. It was Joyce getting the better of me and feeling better. This was her secret. This was Joyce at her worst. I knew her well, but I never suspected that she was capable of such anger and cruelty. It was too much for a loving relationship. If this is what I could expect when she's angry, we have no future. I inserted the CD into the end of the recorder and pressed the copy button. Her conversation was copied directly onto the CD, with the date and time, and when it was completed, I removed it and put it in an envelope to give to Saul. The weekend passed, and no more calls and lies, except when she said she loved me. Again, there was no love on my part, but she didn't even notice. On Monday, I arrived at the office and called Jerry to discuss our plans. I have established the identity and bank accounts in the name of Juan Ramirez, a Mexican citizen. It cost me over $10,000, but now I had all the necessary documents, including a Mexican passport and ID. I even had a fake ID card and driver's license in that name, and since I spoke Spanish fluently, no one asked questions. It's amazing what you can get for money. All funds in this account were held at the Bank of Mexico branch in New York. Mr. Ramirez had access to these funds in the beautiful country of Mexico. Using a fake identity, I opened an account and deposited $1,000 to activate it. On Tuesday, I called Saul and Jerry and I went to see him. Saul gave me the name of the lawyer who will take on this case. This was necessary because I didn't want Saul to be involved in what was about to happen. I made a deal with Jerry to sell the company for a certain amount, but this amount was to be kept in a separate file, accessible only to him and his partners. We have made 2 notes of the deal, one for Saul and one for Jerry, who will keep it secret for now. We had worked out this deal some time ago, and now it was just a matter of getting it done. Jerry and I went to the new lawyer's office. There we transferred money from a reserve account set up for Jerry and the 7 others to whom I offered the company to Juan Ramirez's account. The amount was $2.5 million. The attorney prepared a transfer receipt and gave it to Jerry along with a signed deed transferring ownership from me to Mr. Ramirez for 80% of Cranston Demolitions, Inc. After completing this operation, we returned to Year, who then transferred money from the same account to my personal account at a local bank. This amount was $350,000. The documents indicated the transfer of 20% of the company to my name, Jerry. This time, the receipt was attached to the deed to the building where my company was located and to all shares and funds in corporate accounts. My name was removed from the register of owners and replaced with Jerry's name and his charter. Jerry and his new corporation were now the owners of Cranston Demolitions, Inc. Saul really only knew about this transfer, so he could confidently say that the transaction amount was $350,000. I handed Saul the prepared CDS and went with Jerry to the office to complete the transfer. We called key employees and informed them that the transaction was completed. From that point on, I was unemployed and no longer a boss. It was sad, but also timely. I built this company from the ground up, but now it was someone else's responsibility. After a quick round of congratulations, I left to finalize my plans. I checked my balance at the Bank of Mexico in New York. The money was in the account and will be confirmed by the end of the working day. Tomorrow, Wednesday, Juan Ramirez will become a multimillionaire. He already owned a beautiful home in Puerto Vallarta, a fully restored 1987 Gulfstar Hirsch 45 yacht, and 3 employees awaiting his return. I fully intended to do this as soon as possible. I felt good as I drove home that night. I sold my company to Jerry and his corporation for $850,000, but only $350,000 would show up on the transfer record I now had. The rest of the money was in an account under a different name and could not be traced. Jerry was fine as he had receipts for 100% of the company for the full sale price. So all the records showed that $350,000 was the amount I received. I openly deposited this amount into my account. The rest of the money was legally transferred abroad and could not be traced in the event of a divorce. Saul was preparing my estate for the upcoming divorce, so he counted $350,000 as my share of the business. This was added to my share of the house and property. The rest of the money disappeared, and Joyce would never see it again. From my perspective, since this money was part of our retirement plans, and she decided to go her own way by cheating on me with Ron Mason, she no longer had a right to this money. I offered her a choice, divorce or forgiveness. If she had chosen divorce, I would have given her a fair share of everything we had. It was my fault, and I would have accepted it. But not like that. She chose to cheat for revenge, just to feel better about herself. Her actions made our plans for the future my plans, and they no longer concerned her. I actually made love to Joyce that night, knowing it would be the last time for me. I loved her for so long that breaking up was more difficult than I expected, but she left me no choice. Although I could have stopped her by revealing what I knew, it wouldn't have changed anything. Her intention to cheat was obvious, and she would do it eventually to get back at me for stopping her this time. Joyce made her position clear in conversations with Eileen and Ron. On Wednesday morning, Joyce was especially loving when she walked me to work. I knew that she was so happy, and a wave of sadness washed over me. I loved her for so long that the end was harder than I expected. But she left me no choice. Although I could have stopped her by revealing what I knew, it wouldn't have changed anything. Her intention to cheat was obvious, and she would do it eventually to get back at me for stopping her this time. Joyce made her position clear in conversations with Eileen and Ron. I left the car at Years and took a taxi to the airport, where he made a reservation on a flight to Rio for that evening. Once there, I planned to take a private, unofficial flight back to Mexico and my new home. I had time, so I spent it with Saul to check the final documents. The divorce papers have been completed and will be delivered to Joyce on Thursday morning. I renegotiated the terms, making sure Joyce received all the money in the bank accounts, now over $400,000. The trust funds for the children were already fully funded, and the money I left Joyce met all the requirements for raising them. She'll probably have to go back to work with her lover to stay comfortable, but so be it. In addition, I have placed money in an account that will pay Joyce $5,000 a month in child support, which will continue as long as all of my children's needs are met and she remains unmarried. Once she marries again or the children reach 18, the support will stop. It was hard to do, and I struggled with it until it was all completed. The hardest thing was leaving my children, but I had no other choice. I wrote a letter explaining what I was doing, but not why. I simply told them that their mother and I had decided that we could no longer live together, so I had to leave. I promised to keep in touch with them, and that sometime in the future we would meet, and they could spend time with me if Joyce allowed. My real problem was that the money was in Mexico and in the name of Juan Ramirez, so I needed to stay there to enjoy it. Maybe someday in the future I will find a way to meet them, and even bring them to Mexico to spend time on the yacht and in my villa. Somehow I'll find a way. If I told Joyce where I was, she would be so angry that she would find a way to come after me. I couldn't allow this to happen. I had lunch and called my friends, telling them that I was going to be abroad for a while and that I would contact them later when I returned. It was unlikely, but it established my planned departure. I spent the rest of the day at a small bar and grill and drank enough to feel relaxed, but not so much that I went crazy. I was waiting for time. I had one more thing to do before I left for good. When the clock behind the bar showed 5:00 p.m., I went into the phone booth at the back of the bar, closed the door, and dialed the Ramada number. I asked to speak to Mr. Ron Mason's room and told the operator that he was hard of hearing, so let the phone ring. She confirmed he was there and connected the call, and I waited. Finally, the answer was on the 8th ring. "Hello, who the hell is this?" "Oh shit," he sounded out of breath. "Hey, Ron, this is Russell Cranston, and I'm warning you right now, don't hang up. If you do, I'll come up to your room and break your neck. I think you're with my wife Joyce right now. I want you to hand her the phone right now." Silence on the other end until I heard my wife's angry voice in the background, asking Ron who it was. He whispered something to her, and I waited. "Look, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm here alone. I have no idea where your wife is. You're wrong, you idiot." "No, you are wrong, idiot. Ask my wife about my past. She will confirm that I am telling the truth. Now listen carefully and remember, if you do not hand the phone to my wife right now, I will go up to your room and break your neck. I once warned you what would happen if you didn't listen. Now I'm angry enough to do it to both of you. So give her the phone and hope that I don't come for you after all." There was silence again, but I could hear him covering the phone as he told her what I said. I just waited, knowing that Joyce knew I wasn't joking. I thought I heard a muffled scream, then the sound of clothing and the creaking of bed springs before Joyce answered the phone. "Listen, Russell, it's not what you think. I know it looks bad, but we're just talking, catching up, that's all. I'll come home right now and we can talk. It's not what you think. Darling, so please trust me, okay? I'll be home in a few minutes, Russ, and we'll work it out. It's not what you think." "Sorry, Joyce, but that's exactly what I think. I tapped our phones and heard you planning to meet that jerk at the Ramada. I heard you telling Eileen about the first time with him. Remember when you said she said that it was even better than with me? I know everything, Joyce, and I told you what will happen now. It's too late for your lies." "No, Russ, please, honey, I'm sorry. I'm coming home right now, and this will never happen again. Ron means nothing to me. I love you, only you. Please wait for me. I'll leave right now, and I'll be home in a few minutes, please. Ras. I'm sorry, Joyce. Saul will contact you tomorrow morning with the terms of the divorce. As for me, you won't see me again. I don't want anything to do with you anymore. I tried, Joyce, I really did. I apologized for my mistake and promised that it will never happen again. I did everything I could, but it wasn't enough. You had to get back at me. Well, congratulations. You won, Joyce. Russ, what about the children? You can't leave them. They love you and will miss you. Can you be that cruel? I don't see you care about them now, Joyce. Did you think about them when you were with Ron Mason? Don't try to blame me, Joyce. You ruined our marriage. All you had to do was forgive me. That's all. But you couldn't. Your rage drove you crazy. I heard her crying hysterically, trying to stop me from saying something she didn't want to hear. I heard her screaming at poor Ron, telling him to leave and never come back. Poor guy. He simply took what she offered and didn't risk anything. He thought he was the smartest of us all. But he forgot that I warned him and he did not listen. He will pay for this mistake. I'll call the kids and explain to them why I left. You can tell them anything. But I promise you, you better take care of them, Joyce, or I'll come back for you and you won't like it. And I don't want to see either one of your lovers in this house. I made sure that someone will look after you, so don't make me angry, Joyce. You know what I'm capable of. I'm leaving the country tonight and you won't hear from me again. All contact from now on will be through Saul. Farewell, Joyce. While she was yelling at me to wait, I hung up. One more final call from Jerry, and I was done with Joyce and all that crap. An hour after my call to Joyce, I was on my way to the airport, and 3 flights, and less than 10 hours later, I was in my new home. A week later, I received a copy of the local newspaper from my villa in Puerto Vallarta detailing the explosion and complete destruction of several buildings in the north of the city that occurred 2 days after I left the country. According to the newspaper, each one appeared to be a gas leak that had somehow ignited, causing a huge explosion. Fortunately, no one was injured as a result of the explosions. The article stated, the buildings were owned by Ron Mason, a local realtor, and deliberate arson is suspected. When asked to comment, Mr. Paul Mason said he believed the acts were carried out by a local bomb expert, but he had no evidence that this was the case. According to investigators, the man in question was overseas and could not have been responsible. The explosions were determined to be intentional, and Mr. Pass Mason is the only suspect. If convicted, he faces 30 years in prison. I read the article several times and couldn't help but laugh every time. God bless you, Jerry. Saul contacted me several times asking Joyce to call her and give her a way to contact me, but I told Saul to tell her that I had no desire to talk to her. She threatened to fight the divorce, but Saul told her that he had several CDs of conversations confirming her intention to cheat, and if she continued to fight, he would do those. The records are public to the court and will change the reason for the divorce. He also mentioned a plan to sue her company for failing to enforce moral standards. She and Ron Mason will be named as accomplices. She gave up resistance and the divorce took place. It only took 60 days. I counted each of them. I drove to a small private airport a few miles from my villa to meet the plane that was due to arrive at 2 p.m. I parked the car, entered the small building that served as the terminal, and checked the time. I nodded to a few visitors who knew me. I arrived a little early, but that was okay. I grabbed a Corona at the bar and found a seat near the window where I could watch the planes arrive. The kids were on a private flight booked from Mexico City and headed to this small private airport. This was their 3rd trip, and Joyce realized that the rules for my visit included her absence. As far as she knew, they were in Mexico City, where I was now supposed to live. I would take them and spend a week with them. Jason and Julie knew where I actually lived and why I had to play this little charade. Jason was almost 18 now and could have lived with any of us, but he wanted to go to school in the States, and I understood that. Julie was 16 and really wanted to stay with her mother. I didn't have any problems with any of them. I just wanted them to know me and to know that I still loved them. But I didn't want Joyce to know anything about me or my life here. When they first came, Joyce's sister Eileen was with them. At first, I was angry and worried that she would find out the truth and ruin my first date with the kids. But after talking to her, I changed my mind. She wasn't mad at me or blamed me for leaving Joyce like I did. She told me she was glad I did it, that Joyce needed the shock of losing me to make her see what she was doing. After talking privately with my children, I decided that she should participate in these visits from now on. After the first visit, when they swore to secrecy after I brought them here to my villa, Jason and Julie were happy to keep my secret from their mother. Part of this was because they knew why I divorced Joyce and resented her for it, but I also knew that they loved the boat, the horses I kept nearby, the villa with a staff of 3 willing to please 2 teenagers, and the fact that their father was a rich gringo. At home, they swore to contact me only on my cell phone and only when I was away from Joyce. We made an agreement, and everyone respected it. As for Eileen, she also agreed, but we had a special agreement that she seemed happy with. The plane landed, they took off and ran to the terminal where they knew I was waiting. It was great to see them all, and I stood up ready to hug and kiss them. I met them at the door, and it was as if time had simply melted away, and just yesterday they were here with me. That is, if I hadn't noticed that Jason had grown another 2 inches and added 10 pounds to his lean frame, and that Julie was starting to look more like a young woman than a child. They greeted me and ran to get their simple luggage. I kept clothes for them in the villa, and they could buy everything they needed for the week. I watched them leave with fatherly pride. I turned to their fellow traveler. Were there any problems during the trip? Is Joyce still convinced you're in Mexico City? Yes. I told her we would be on the way so she could call me on my cell phone. It's the only number she has, and although she hates it, she knows she has no choice. This way, she won't know where we are really happy. Wonderful. Although I doubt it will make much difference now that it's been almost 2 years since I left. By the way, how is she doing? Not much better. She's still trying to convince herself that you'll be back soon. She'll be waiting for you, Russ. You know that. She doesn't date someone. She goes to work in a new place, comes home and spends all her time with the children. She never leaves the house and has no real friends. She has no life. This is the life she chose. That's what she wanted when she decided Ron was better than me. She knows it was a huge mistake, and she has been going to counseling for the last 2 years to try to learn to control her anger. She wanted revenge, not Ron Mason. Maybe, what about you? What do you want? What's on your mind? You know what I'm thinking. I know for sure that you are better than Ron Mason, and I fully expect you to come to me as soon as the children fall asleep. Am I sleeping in the same room? The one next to you, with the adjacent door? Absolutely, and I will try to live up to your expectations. And you probably won't get much sleep tonight or for the next few nights. This is a promise. I expect you to keep your promise. At that moment, the children came running back with 3 overnight stays. Jason put one down so I could carry it. Here is Aunt Eileen's bag. This one you can carry. With a wink and a rap of his knuckles, my son Jason let me know that he was fully aware of our little secret. Mine and Eileen's. She never seemed to hate me like I thought she did. She was just jealous of her little sister. I never knew. Am I happy now? I do not know yet. Time will show. Even though I see them as often as I can, I miss my kids and I miss Joyce. After all, she was my only love for almost 18 years. And Eileen. We are together only for sex, and our relationship is not going anywhere. She knows it, and so do I. She wants me to go back to Joyce, but she knows I can't do that, at least not now, if ever. And there are some very nice women here who would just like to meet the handsome gringo living in the villa on the hill and help him get over the American woman. I can just let them. Ask Joyce, the consequences are just a bitch. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think. Click to the next one. Click to the next one. Click to the next one. Click to the next one.